One of the main reasons that Donald Trump was able to win the 2024 election was because he was able to convince a big enough portion of the American voting public that he was going to be able to solve, fix, or at least make better the current affordability crisis, which has struck America. It struck the rest of the world too, but of course, for the purpose of this segment, the American economy is where we're focusing. Now, for the average voter, and this isn't meant to be insulting, it's just the truth, not everybody is a sick political junkie like me and following the news 24/7. The average voter doesn't really know much or care much about policy. All they see is what their life material looks like under different administrations. It's why so many Americans under Biden were able to look back in the Trump years and think, wow, things were so much more affordable then. Life was easier for me. Let's take the risk and vote this guy in again so he can make the country like it was when he was in the first time. Now, I already have a lot of problems with that. I think people have short-term memory loss and kind of forgot how horrible so much was under the first Trump administration and so much of the horrible stuff he did. But it is true that inflation was lower, the cost of goods was lower. All of that is true. But if you actually asked any of those voters, what did Trump do in his first term to make the economy so good? Like, what was the legislation he passed? What was the policy he implemented? What were the moves he made, whether it was cabinet appointments or executive orders? By what means did Trump improve the economy in his first term? It would be crickets, okay? Because again, the average voter doesn't know much or care much about policy. That's okay, but that is why politicians like Trump can easily prey on people who don't follow politics so closely and just convince them that he's going to be able to lower prices in his second term just by constantly talking about the price of groceries, affordability. And when Biden's in office, and because of the COVID crisis, the war in Ukraine, supply chain issues, affordability, not just in the States, but everywhere was going crazy, it's really easy to in contrast, make yourself look good. And so affordability was a huge reason that Trump got reelected, along with his positions on immigration. And then, of course, he just has his cult base who seemingly is never going to ever abandon him, although there's been some slight cracks in that recently with the Epstein case and other stuff. But even with that, I think it's overblown how much of a crack there is in his base, because even if they disagree with him on the Epstein stuff, the polling shows that his approval amongst Republicans has only gone up since the Epstein scandal has started, which is absolutely baffling, but that's why I say it's a cult. That's for another video. Enough people have already talked about it. I don't think it should be controversial to say that the MAGA base is 1,000,000% a cult. They make it more and more obvious each day. But for the independents and the less hardcore Trump voters who did support him last time around, the way that the economy has been going under his second term is a reason why his approval rating amongst the general public is plummeting fast, because this economy is going up in flames, and there's been a few things recently that continue to highlight that. So first of all, Trump fired the labor statistics chief after the most recent poor jobs report, where they said only 73,000 jobs were added in July, but worse than that, they made revisions to the May and June job numbers, which ended up being over 100,000 less than originally stated. So that's a really terrible look. In May, down from 144,000 to only 19,000 jobs, and June from 147,000 to 14,000. So that's almost 130,000 job reduction in the numbers for both those months. Like, the economy is going terribly, all right? There is no job growth. Tariffs are coming in, making things worse. The crackdown on immigrants, who make up a large part of the workforce as well, is definitely having an effect on this. And then just, along with the tariffs is just Trump bullying all these countries and them wanting to do less business. Tourism is falling off a cliff. The economy is just not doing well. But instead of just accepting how bad things are and changing his policy, a narcissist like Trump could never do that. Instead, he's just going to fire the labor statistics chief and say that it was rigged, as he always does, because he's a big fat baby. I was just informed that our country's job numbers are being produced by a Biden appointee, Dr. Erica McIntarfer, the Commissioner of Labor Statistics, who faked the job numbers before the election to try and boost Kamala's chances of victory. Blah, 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 blah. I have directed my team to fire this Biden political appointment immediately. She will be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified. I mean, I can't read Trump tweets at this point. They hurt my brain. Anybody with more than 4 IQ, it's going to kill brain cells to read this kind of stuff. But yeah, basically just saying that, oh, this person is faking job numbers because they're a Biden appointee. It's obviously bullshit. Even if you believe there is bias in government agencies and there's some people within the bureaucracy, or as he would call it, the deep state, which does exist, but not in the way that a lot of MAGA supporters portray it. I mean, the deep state is really just the bureaucracy along with the intelligence agencies. It's just the pieces of the government that stay the same throughout administrations. But of course, a big part of Trump's second term has been to fire people from the old deep state and then put loyalist MAGA supporters and just create his own version of the deep state. He's not unrigging the system, he's just re-rigging it in his own favor. But this is just another example of that. He's not happy with the honest job report, so instead he's gonna put someone in who will hopefully skew the numbers a little bit for him. And skewing the numbers, juicing the numbers, is not unique to only jobs. Let's have a look at CPI, the Consumer Price Index data. The Trump government is actually cutting the amount of data they're collecting. So when the Consumer Price Index is being calculated, it used to be hovering around 90, maybe dipping down into the mid 80s% of the amount of the CPI index that is based on actual collected prices. And now that is plummeting down to the 60s range, and the amount of imputed, meaning just kind of guessing, estimating the amount of inflation, has gone from below 10%, hovering around 10%, shooting up to almost 40% of the consumer price index is now just based on imputations, estimations. And you can see on this graph here from Bloomberg just how sharp this change has been. This wasn't something that happened gradually. This is something that happened starting around the beginning of June of this year. It is totally shameless. It is obviously the result of what I would personally and frankly and bluntly call a fascist administration trying to juice and skew and obscure the numbers to hide how horrible the American economy is right now. So when you look at this kind of thing, compared with the jobs data, compared with the fact that tourism is declining, I mean, this is just going to get worse and worse. I even saw from the White House the other day, let's see if I can find it, they put up this tweet about how they've collected over $150 billion in tariff revenue. Now, if you know the first thing about tariffs, they are a tax on consumers. So when the White House is bragging about $150 million in tariff revenue, they are bragging about the American consumers paying another $150 billion out of their pockets. And it's frankly, again, it's just so shameless. The Trump administration has consistently tried to play dumb and act like they don't know how tariffs work. Sometimes I wonder if they are just that stupid, but I don't think so. There's no way they don't know that. Here it is. Welcome to the golden age. Thanks to the leadership of POTUS, the U.S. has generated over $150 billion in tariff revenues within the past 6 months. Well, guess what? I've never in my life seen an administration brag about how much they are taxing Americans. And their argument is, oh, it's not being passed to the consumers. The businesses are eating it. First of all, that's bullshit. That's not how capitalism works. That's not how tariffs works. They're always going to pass these prices on to the consumers. Second of all, I actually wouldn't find it that far-fetched that to start, the companies may be eating some of these tariffs because first of all, they probably think Trump is going to back off of them eventually. So maybe temporarily they're eating a lot of it, hoping it'll blow over. And second of all, because of how authoritarian and fascistic Trump has run the government this time around, I do genuinely think a lot of corporate America, a lot of the businesses probably have a little fear that he's going to come for them the same way he came for CBS, some of these universities, The same way he's coming for a lot of these private and public institutions and just straight up bullying and domineering them. I also think it's pathetic when universities like Columbia have given in to Trump and his demands. You should fight this at every turn if you have any sense of decency, morality. But I guess a lot of these institutions and companies like CBS, who paid out $16 million in a case they could have easily won if they fought it, but they just wanted to appease Mr. Orange dictator fascist over here. But what I was saying is I wouldn't even be surprised if, out of fear, some of these companies are also eating these tariffs to begin with because they want to help Trump out. They don't want the public to panic too fast. They're kind of giving into his whims that they better eat the costs. But long term, again, that's just not how it's going to work. So even if these companies are eating the costs at first, that's probably also why the job numbers are so low, if that's the case. And second of all, eventually these costs will lead to even more inflation and they will be passed on to American consumers. So all in all, the American economy is going up in flames. Donald Trump is destroying this country from the inside out. He is doing a bunch more horrific shit in terms of immigration and the crackdown on freedom of speech, especially of pro-Palestine protesters. I mean, there's so much I could go into, but for the sake of this video, I'm just focusing on some of these recent economic numbers, which just show how much of a disaster the United States is in financially, economically. And yes, the economy was already pretty bad before Trump came in, but he just took a canister of gasoline to a campfire and has turned this bitch into a whole forest fire. And yeah, this shit is going up in flames.